Good morning and good evening, everybody. So, as Sophia said, I'm the global product manager for Muse Enterprise. So, uh, I am here to talk about the web client a little bit with you and Muse NX R2. But any questions, comments, anything you want to relate to us, please feel free to share it in the chat. After I'm done presenting, I'll look at all, I'll answer all, and I'll take all the inputs you have for us. I appreciate your engagement there. So, first, I wanted to start with just reminding them Muse NX R2 has been out for a while, and we have improved upon our Muse Enterprise legacy and bringing it to NX, which brings us essentially this web client, and it improves on the workflow as being a single point of access to see all the patient records regarding ECGs, stress, and Holter. And also, it enhances the clinical and billing workflows, making sure that the right clinician has access to the right data when they actually need it. So within the Muse NX R2, wanted to talk a little bit about web client, and then from there, I want to move to the serial comparison on demand within the web client. Our web client is a web-based solution, meaning it's a zero footprint client. There's really nothing to install, and you can access your studies via a web link. It is mostly used by physicians or any readers or anybody that wants to view an ECG for those that have Epic as the provider or any EMR system that has a Smart on Fire, compatible Smart on Fire with the Muse Web. They can actually access these studies through their EMR system without leaving the EMR system. Or you can use it separately by simply just putting the icon on a desktop for Muse Web and accessing it through that. Again, nothing to install, it's just simply a web link that you can use. It also provides unlimited view and edit clients. Majority of our users, they either want to just view an ECG or they want to be able to edit it. And when I say edit it, we majority speak to physicians' workflow here. But the ones that they want to view it, it's unlimited. They can view it as many. And if they want to edit it, they can add that as well, but it goes based on the privileges they have within the Muse system. So whatever privileges they have, whatever they can do within the enterprise, within the thick client, they can also do it on the web client. And it has a clean new user interface. You see it on the right-hand side. I'll do a live demo for you guys in a minute as well. And it allows for authenticated user, obviously, to log in and do what they need to do within there, but we have created it after the ECG paper workflows, so it would be an intuitive layout, and the buttonology are a little bit easier and more intuitive again for signing or editing or using calipers or any tools that are needed to use while doing the EKG. So within that, I'm going to move into the serial comparison within the web client. Let's talk about the serial comparison. What is serial comparison before we get into how we use it in the web client? So serial comparison, it is a way of viewing and comparing a current ECG that you have up with a previous or older ECGs that the patient might have. It does an algorithm comparison that will show you a clinically significant changes, whether it's in rhythm, it is in measurements. It will show you that information and states it, as you can see in that little screenshot on top left. And it allows for a more complete understanding of patient ECG history and changes that has happened to help physicians avoid guesswork or even verify their interpretation and their decisions. The serial comparison has shown that there is a 50% reduction in false positive admission when it's present. There's also 31% reduction in CCU admission for non-AMI patients. Also, there is a 14% increase in ECG interpretation accuracy as well. So serial comparison has been very helpful the way it's been presented. But what we have done within the web client to improve that is that in the past we did only with the first previous ECGs. What we're doing in the web client, we are allowing you to choose the previous ECG, whichever you want it to be, first, second, third, or oldest, and run a serial comparison on demand yourself. So here it gives you information when it's, for example, compared to certain ECGs. If you don't accept that, you don't believe that, you think is wrong, or you want to just simply compare it to something different, you can select your previous ECG and click on the serial comparison button. And that will then gives you the new statement. Now, this could be used again to click replace and replace the current statement with this one, or it could be simply for your viewing. As a physician, you just simply want to know if there's any changes between those two EKGs. And you can do this and then hit cancel, simply just bringing it into a view that allows you to see comparison and you can see the changes. So that being said, I'm going to go into our system and show you the Muse web client essentially in action. So as I said, you can log into Muse web client by simply accessing it through the web link, or you can go through your EMR system. I'm going to go ahead here and log into as my Muse admin. When the web client loads, you have certain in baskets or certain inboxes up top that comes with the system. My in basket, all on confirm, and recent edits. You can go in and change those as part of your profile, make many more inboxes, or delete a few. And within those in baskets or inboxes, you can modify again, like profiles. For example, what test types do you want to see? What quality, whether or not you want to see certain columns within here. So you can do all of those as you can do within the thick client's profile. So when I come into my in basket, the reason these are showing red in here is because they have a critical value that was met. So if there was a critical value met, we'll turn that to red. If I go to all on confirm, I see that certain are red and certain are not. And those are the ones that do not have any critical value called on them when they did the EKG on the EKG card. So at this point, I can essentially open any of my EKGs and it will have the layout. You have your interpretation box up here. If there's more, you can expand it to view full. You have the zoom in, zoom out. You have the caliper and print option. You get your measurement, patient information banner. You can expand that to see more information if you wish. You can edit the order information in the web client as well if necessary. But we wanted to talk about the serial presentation here. So I'm going to go ahead to the serial presentation, and I can see, for example, here, there is no serial presentation. There is no essentially serial comparison statement in here. So I can generate that by clicking on serial comparison. However, from the test history, I can go and select any other test that I want to. So if I don't want to compare it to this one, I can go in and, for example, select this ECG and go ahead and click serial comparison. It generates this statement and I can view it. Once I view this statement, I can cancel it or I can replace it. If I do, now this information replaced what used to be there, and it gives you what has happened since the previous ECG was done. You can change that because you haven't signed it yet. You can change that by selecting it differently, ECG from the past and do serial comparison again. And if you like that better, you can continue replacing it. So you can do this as much as you want, or you can always have the option of restoring to original. So you can go here, say, you know what, I don't want to do any of that. You click on restore, it tells you what the original was. Would you like to restore it? You can always restore. So within the interpretation, you can generate the serial comparison for viewing. You can then restore it or go ahead and sign this ECG and complete it from the serial presentation layout. So as I went through this, I purposefully was aiming for 15 minutes, hoping for a lot of questions and a lot of comments. I don't see a lot in the chat, so please feel free to put any questions here for us and any comments you have. If there is nothing else, I'm gonna pass it to Sophia.
Yes, there is a hand raised, so I would actually recommend you. So if you would like to rather speak up, you can raise your hand and I can allow you to talk as well. So I see that Mats Johansson has raised your hand, so I will allow you to talk and you can ask your questions to Mo. You would need to go unmute as well first.
Mats, if you're asking a question, you might need to unmute first.
The hand is lowered, so let's see if the audio is not working. Otherwise, happy if you can type it into the chat or the Q&A.
Yes.
Otherwise, Mo, there is a question in the Q&A that you might want to have a look at meanwhile.
Perfect. So it says, have the GE team made any progress on either a tool in Muse or a Python script to anonymize Muse ECG XML file? Would this be a reason for exporting these XML to a different place?
I would assume that. So
if this is regarding Muse ECG X, yes, for research.
Yes, for research.
Yeah, so we definitely have heard this comment also in the past. It is something that we're looking into and working on to make sure that we're addressing that issue. We're not at the point that I can give you a timeline or a roadmap that where we stand with that, but it's certainly a feedback we've heard and we started working on looking into to see how is that possible for us.
Thank you. And I hope and wish that that's answered your question as well. Otherwise, please continue to use the Q&A for that one. I will mark them as answered live otherwise. There is no further question in the chat, so maybe I would like to ask you, Mo, that since we have a few more minutes before we have the next presenter coming on, you did mention a little bit about the web, and it might be some user that hasn't used the web prior. So could you quickly give us a demo as well on how to actually review and use the tools available in the web to review the ECG, do some measurements, and maybe also how to sign off an ECG once that is done?
Sure. And I think we just have a question also popped up that to do the serial comparison, do you need the previous ECG to be confirmed first? And the answer is no. You can, when you do a serial comparison on demand, you can do that with any ECGs. If you have it part of the automatic serial comparison, then you can define those criteria, whether or not you want it to be confirmed or serial compared when it's done automatically with the system. You can define that to be, for example, with previous must be confirmed or just a state existed. But in here, you can run a serial comparison on demand on any previous ECGs that you select there. So for example, here, the check mark means it's signed. So I'm going to choose something that is not and go serial compare. And that will allow me to do a serial comparison. We have another question. It says, what will happen if you do compare two ECGs with different inpatient demographics? So the good thing about using the Muse client is that you cannot use ECGs from two different patients to serial compare. And the reason for that is I'll go home. In order for me to get to serial comparison, I need to choose the patient here first. So this is my test patient, and it has the same patient ID. So once I do that, it will only load previous ECGs that matches that patient ID and patient name and patient demographics. So you cannot do serial comparison for a different patient in here. So you can only select ECGs in the past that are done for that patient, unless obviously you have put in the wrong patient ID in there, and that will require more fixing. You have to correct the previous ID. You have to come in and correct the serial comparison as well by either restoring it to original here or select a different one from test history and do a serial compare. So you can do either one, but that's only when it's done when you have put in the wrong patient ID in a different patient that now matches this patient. Otherwise, you cannot compare two different patients' studies to one another because Muse will only load ECGs for you that matches that patient ID. The second question says about the mismatch file. Is it possible to correct the data on web, or is always necessary the client version? So unfortunately, as of now, you cannot edit the patient demographics in the Muse web. It is still for the, I would call it more of a technician workflow where you go in and correct the patient information. That would require the thick client version. It would not be possible on web, but that's also along the lines I said in the past. Is that something we've heard and would like what we're working on to address as well? On this one, also, we're not in a place that I can provide any timeline or specifics on the release, but that's something that we know our customers are interested in seeing. It says if an ECG was wrongly uploaded to a different patient, can it be deleted, edit from the web client? It goes exactly with the previous answer. So within the edit, we are also bringing the deleting from the web client. So that's certainly something that we're working on to bring to our web client. So expand from the physician workflow to more of a technician for workflow and things that you can do to edit patient information. Second one says, means same ID, means same patient, same ID, but typo demographics. Yeah, so you mean the mismatch. I see what you mean. So I purposefully selected the mismatch. As long as the patient ID is there, you can do your serial comparison on demand if there is a mismatch in that information. So if the patient ID was correct, but you have the wrong date of birth or race, or let's say a typo in the last name, you still can on a serial comparison on demand because a physician can simply say, hey, I understand that's correct. There's a typo in it. I still want to go ahead and serial compare it. So this is a mismatch here that I selected. It has exactly the same what you mentioned, but I'm still able to do serial comparison and go ahead and replace that because what matters is the EKG that I'm looking at is correct and has no issue. By web to correct. So the next question says, can you edit the patient demographics by web to correct? I think we answered that. can compare ECG from different brand, G and third party. They do not use our algorithm. For that, we're working on a different solution to be able to do that, which requires a little bit more work upfront to make sure we understand the algorithm and understand the findings. We do not do a word search when it comes to serial comparison, meaning we just don't look at what's in this interpretation box and say, for example, okay, now here it says complex for, like, let's say ventricular complexes. And you have PVCs now. Here I don't see PVC, so I'm going to say PVC is no longer present. So we do not do a word search. We do an algorithm comparison. So for that one, we require a little bit more complicated solution because our third-party non-GE cards, we don't have the preview, we do not have the knowledge on their algorithm to bring it in and say this is how it is going to be done. So something we're working on, but it certainly requires a more complex solution than what we can do with our GE cards. I love the questions. I wish we had a few more.
Yeah, so please, if you have a few more, we have a few more minutes we can actually spend on this topic. So maybe Mo, meanwhile, if you want to just quickly show the different tools we have to do some measurements and what kind of measurement values we actually see in the web client. And then let's see if there comes any more questions before we move on to the next topic.
Perfect. Yeah,
Thanks.
we can do that. So I just wanted to show you our caliper option that we have in here as well. A maximum of distance between two ECGs you can compare. So one more question came in, so I'm going to read that one. And I think by distance, you mean the time separation between the two. There is no limit on it. So you can go as far back as you want to for that ECG for the patient history. If the ECG is part of the patient history, we do not put a timeline on it. If I am in a hospital today, December 3rd, 2024, and the first ECG I ever had was December 3rd, 2010, 14 years ago, then as a physician, you can select it as long, and it will be part of this, and you can select it and do a serial comparison. So there is no timeline we put on that, limits that we put on that, as long as it's been in our algorithm and it's not from a different ECG card, then you can go as far back as you want to do the comparison. It says if in serial comparison on the ECG's demographic data has been changed, corrected, does it automatically override the serial comparison text? There will be two scenarios for that. Whether you are fixing the demographics information for a previous ECG that you compared the current ECG to. So if I go and edit later from a different page, the information on this blue ECG down here, it will not override anything. It will not override any of the information in serial comparison because that patient demographics wasn't impacting that serial comparison statement. It will go the same here. If you go in and change the patient demographics up top in a web client, in a thick client, then it still will not impact what you have in the serial comparison. Now, I'm guessing you're saying if you put a wrong patient information, you compared it to a previous ECG from a wrong patient, you realized, okay, this patient information is wrong. I'm going to go in and put the correct patient ID. I'm going to correct the information. And then hit demo complete or hit update, whatever you do in your workflow, still we do not have automatic serial comparison. So when you demo complete it, we will not go in and say, okay, I compared it to the first previous ECG for test patient, but now you realize this was wrong and this is really Moh Choubdar's EKG. I'm going to go update this. This information will not get updated when you change the name from test patient to Moh Choubdar. So you need to run the serial comparison manually as well to make sure that information is corrected. But let me ask you this. Would that be something that you guys want? That whenever you update the patient demographics, it does an automatic serial comparison? And then would you want it to be associated with the buttons, like for example, update or demo complete? Or would you want it to be always updating or doing the serial comparison automatically whenever the patient ID has been updated? And doesn't matter what you press after, whether it's update, demo complete, diagnosis complete, fellow confirmed. I'll leave that to you to answer. We have ECG results to put like, so while you guys answering my question, I have another question that came in. It says, in Germany, we have ECG result reports like SR, HF64, comma, LT, no disturbance of respiration in one line with comma separated. So no text like abnormal ECG. Could you set up a system like this? So you want it to be, when you hit enter, provides the comma? Am I understanding that correctly? So when you're done typing, you hit enter, it puts a comma and goes to the right after the comma and allows you to type again? If that's the case, I would like to talk to you more and I would like to understand this more. I would be interested to see some use cases and see how we can work together to set that up for you. Currently is not something that we do use, but I would like to know more on that.
I think it might be Stefan Schlüter's question, so I did approve you to speak up. So if you're able to unmute your microphone, I hope that you could ask the question.
I hope you can hear me. Oh, okay,
yes,
super.
Absolutely, great, thank you.
So physicians in Germany write like SR, like sinus rhythm, heart frequency 65, left type, and then up no repolarization problems, also like that. In one line, comma separated, because when you take it over into the discharge summary, you don't have to delete the carriage returns and so on. You have just one line and you have the most important information in one line. And with you, you give always a carriage return in and missing the difficult in English, the left type or the orientation of the heart and so on.
Yeah.
The question is if you could, if it's possible to set up the system that instead of making every normal sinus rhythm in one line, next line left axis deviation, next line non-specific T-wave abnormality, in one line, comma separated, so they don't have to change that again. And you can take over this easily into discharge summaries, for example.
I see what you mean. So Stefan, if it's okay, can we stay in contact after this call? And I would like to learn a little bit more and see. I don't think there is a solution today that we can do, but I would like to dig into it and see how we can provide one for you.
Yeah, sure.
Sophia, you have Stefan's contact information?
No, but I'd be happy if I can write my email in the Q&A, and we can store that one. So if you want to follow up on any questions, or if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to me, and I can put you in contact later on. So we follow all the GDPR and everything.
Sorry, Sophia.
Yeah,
so I will shortly put my email in the Q&A.
That would be nice, because I have also to leave.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Thank you.